All right, guys, I'm back online. I'm sorry I got kicked out of the meeting. How about that, huh? Okay. All right, quick recap. We are also recording this webinar. So this is about how to start your career in big data. Some practical advice, right? So from kind of my background, my name is Sujee Maniyam. I've been doing big data for a while, and I'm a software person. I have 15, 20 years of software development background. I am a founder of Elephant Scale. We specialize in big data technology. Wrote a couple of books. First one is called Hadoop Illuminated. It's actually an open source book. You can actually do a search and download this book, Hadoop Illuminated. And the other one we wrote is called HBase Design Patterns. HBase is a popular NoSQL database. And we sort of looked at some of the design patterns for that. And here's my email and my GitHub if you'd like to get in touch with me. All right, so that's all the intros. So again, like I was saying, kind of a quick recap, looking at the technology waves. In the 90s, it was a web technology. Then it's about 2007-ish, we had the mobile revolution with smartphones. And Hadoop comes online around 2008. And that spawns the whole big data ecosystem. In 2015, sort of the trend we are seeing is we are looking at more and more streaming, more big data, as in real time and analytics perspective. Now we're in 2016, right? So the trend continues. So a lot of people ask us, right? I mean, is it like a real deal, big data? Should I invest my time and money learning this? It's very, very real, right? Let me show you some stats that you guys will believe this. So I got this graph from Indeed.com. Indeed is a job site, and one of the things they do is they actually aggregate job trends, right? So I sort of punched in Hadoop, right, and then we'll see what are the job markets like, and you can see it's going up and to the right, which is great, right? Which is what we want. And also, if you look here, the top skills, you can see Hadoop is right there at number 7. So Hadoop and big data technologies are very much in demand. And also, it doesn't hurt to make some money either, right? So again, it's the same place, Indeed.com. You can actually look at some salaries. So again, same thing, I just punched in Hadoop and San Jose, and you can see, not a bad living. Even though San Jose, that money may not get you much, but still a good money, good amount of change, right? So just to make sure the audience for these talks are for developers, right? So developers who are looking to make a switch into big data. And let's first get right what doesn't work. And unfortunately I see this a little too often, right? People sort of trying to say, oh yeah, I will do like a weekend course on big data, and then by Monday I'll be a big data developer, right? Unfortunately, that doesn't really work, because big data, as you guys will see, not just one or two technologies. You need to kind of understand a bunch of technologies, and the learning curve is a little steep. And I'm not saying this just to scare you, but just set real, right? So let's see what it takes to become a big data developer. I kind of broke this up into sort of 4 categories: learning, networking, sort of be known, and sort of finally get hired. Right? Let's go all these steps and see what you can do. And again, please don't take this as advice. It's more like a practical tips, right? So people ask me all the time, what can we do in big data? What are the jobs that are possible, right? So I sort of broke this into 3 categories. First track is if you're an admin. So admin is, you're a network admin, you're a Linux admin, right? You're a DB admin. So you know how to keep things running. So sort of your track would be more on the Hadoop admins, managing Hadoop clusters, keeping things running, keeping data infrastructure going on. And the new term we use for that is called DevOps, right? It's admin and some programming. That's one track. Another track we use is if you're a developer, right? Let's say you are a web developer or a Java developer. And then we look at building big data applications, right? So here's kind of the outline I'm outlining. For example, you will be needing skill set wise, you will need Linux, and you know like a Java or Python, and you will need Hadoop skills. And the other track I think about is sort of a data analyst or data scientist. So these are people who actually analyze data, right? And most likely you sort of use something like R or Python, and you have pretty good background in stats and math. And also, most importantly, you have the domain skills, right? For example, if you know, maybe you know the healthcare industry very well, or banking knowledge. That's very important. And basically in big data, we sort of call you as big data analysts, right? So you'll be doing the same thing, but using the big data tools. And as you all know, I sort of like to make a little fun. How data scientist is the hardest job right now, right? Basically, so we make fun of saying, oh yeah, data scientists are just they are math geeks. Now we call them data scientists and pay them a lot of money, right? So anyway, just a little humor. All right, guys. And another thing I want to make sure we understand is hopefully you guys can hear me and follow along the presentation. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat window, right? So I'll be monitoring the chat window and answer any questions, right? All right. So step one, let's see if we can learn something. How do we learn? The best option is learn from your current job, right? So let's say your employer, you guys are doing a big data project. That's the best place to learn, right? And also if possible, maybe you can take a training class from your employer. Sometimes that's not an option because, your company doesn't do big data or there are not many opportunities. In that case, we recommend you sort of, kind of roll up your sleeves and learn on your own. So how can you do this on your own? So books are always a great start, right? And there are so many books to recommend a few. If you go to any book site like Amazon and then you can do a quick search and you can find tons of books, read the reviews and buy a few books. I will send out a follow-up email to the webinar and we will list some of the books that we found very useful. Right? Also, if you go to big data vendors, they actually have tutorials available on their website, right? So, you can tutorials for free and start working on those. I also like to do webinars, right, like this one, because A, most of the webinars are free, and B, you can watch the webinar on your own time. All right, guys, so looks like, one second, looks like people are having trouble kind of getting the sound. Let me kind of put this in real quick, right? You need to sort of dial in. Right. So let me just put this graphics up real quick. So, looks like people are having some trouble. All right. All right, guys. So if you guys want to join me webinar, please, there's like a little phone icon on the top left corner. Go ahead and click that and to dial into the meeting. Right. All right. Just to give you, click on the phone and then you can dial using the internet or dial using the phone number. Either one is fine. Okay. All right. So the question is, where do sort of engineers and testers fall in? That's a good question. Actually, testers kind of fall in, I would say, more on the developer side because you would be actually testing big data applications. So QA engineers is a great place to start big data as well because testing in big data is just at very early stages. So it's a great time for if you're a QA engineers to look into big data. All right, guys. So continuing on, so webinars, right? Watch webinars. You can sign up for webinars at pretty much any of the major vendors. Also go to meetups, right? Because meetups there are a lot of meetups around, and especially in big data, I'm sure wherever you live, you have tons of meetings. Right? So I'm going to meetups to network and learn. So people ask me, what do we learn? Right? What should I learn if you're a big data developer? Here are some of the, I sort of like to give you guys like some segments. For example, we need to know fundamentals pretty well. So when I say fundamentals, what do I mean? So for example, you need to know Linux. You need to version control like Git, a nice IDE like Eclipse or IntelliJ, right? And a good programmer's editor. So these are all basics, right? Which you need to understand to kind of be productive in big data. Because trust me, you will be using these tools on a day-to-day basis. On a language side, right? They will say, what language should I learn? So usually the way I look at language is you need to know one main language that is your day-to-day thing, right? And also you need to do one scripting language. For example, let's say your day-to-day language is Java. And for me, I program in Java and Scala most of the time, and my scripting language is Python, right? So kind of, just have two languages side by side. Also, right now, if you learn Scala and Clojure and R, these are pretty hot languages, right? So if you're planning on picking up a new language, one of these is not a bad idea. Next thing, infrastructure. You need to know cloud technologies, right? So the cloud technologies could be either one of those Amazon, Google, Azure. Doesn't matter which one, but you need to kind of at least get some familiarity with the cloud technology. And these are very easy to use. You can go sign in, sign up, get an account. And when you sign up, most of the time they will give you free credit, right? So you can kind of experiment, play around. So we're going to learn Scala. I'll give you some pointers towards the end. Scala is basically a language. Do a search for Scala, and the online tutorials are very good, right? All right, guys. So continuing on what we are learning, you need to know something analytics. In analytics, basically we recommend you need to know learn Hadoop ecosystem. For example, your basic HDFS, Pig, and Hive. And Spark is actually pretty hot right now, so I'll look into that too. And especially when you're doing streaming technologies, you need to understand a basic queue technology. Some of them is like Kafka or Kinesis, right? And right now Kafka is pretty good. Again, guys, I'm kind of, I know we are sort of going through a lot of names and acronyms. I will send you guys the slides after the webinar, so you can look at them and do your search and learn more. Streaming. If you're doing more streaming, Spark streaming is pretty hot right now, and there are other technologies coming on like Fling and Samsa. So take a look at these, right? And also NoSQL. The popular ones are Cassandra, HBase, or if you know Mongo or Couchbase, those are great as well, right? The hot ones are right now Cassandra and HBase. Plus, when you do big data, you need to understand metrics, software like Graphite, Logstash, Grafana. These things are pretty useful when you're developing your big data applications. And also, when you do analytics, you need to be able to present data in like nice graphs. And as a developer, I'm not a graphics person. As a developer, I found Excel, yes, the Microsoft Office Excel, to be the perfect graphing tool, right? So you can punch in some numbers and generate all sorts of graphs. So yeah, so don't overlook Excel as a graphing tool. Right, so yeah, so question was in the streaming right now, yes, I should have mentioned Storm here. Storm is also a pretty good streaming platform as well, right? So another question I get is, should you get specialized in one technology, or should we be generalist, right? My personal preference is I would hire a strong generalist, right? What I mean by that is, because since the technologies change all the time, right? For example, this year Spark is pretty hot. Who knows what's going to be, coming up next year? So what I like to hire is I like to hire people who are, what we call strong generalists, meaning they have pretty good grasp on all the technologies and they have very solid fundamentals. And in my experience, that always worked out, right? All right, practice. So let's say you're reading a book, right? And how do you practice, right? So one of the best way to practice is you need to go get a what we call a sandbox. For example, if you're practicing Hadoop, you can download Hadoop sandboxes from these vendors. The reason we recommend a sandbox is you have everything installed and ready to go, and you can practice writing your code, right? If you're using Spark, for example, right, do a search for Pancake Stack, right? And this is done by my friend Chris Regley. So he actually has a VM ready to go that has Spark and a lot of other software components installed. So you can just download the VM and on your way, right? So download one of these sandboxes rather than trying to install them on your own. Download a sandbox so you can actually get up and running very quickly. Right? Also, when you download the sandboxes, they come with some tutorials. So it's always like it's a good idea to kind of you can sort of do the tutorials. Also, we maintain a set of Hadoop labs online. So if you do we do a search for elephant scale high labs, you can still see our Hadoop labs, and we maintain them. They're up to date, so you can actually go and try these out as well. How do you get data? Again, our book Hadoop Illuminated, we have a chapter. We list all the publicly available big data sets, right? So you can go download them. For example, if you're using Amazon, Amazon has also hosting some really large data sets. So if you have an Amazon ecosystem, you can play around with them as well. Right? So it kind of gives you an idea of how to get the VMs, how to get some exercises, and how to get some data. Right? So another thing, so let's say you do this, and unfortunately, most people kind of try this on their laptops. They will spend like maybe 1 or 2 days kind of trying it out, and that's it. They will stop, right? And honestly, that's not good enough. What I always recommend people is once you have things working on your laptop or a VM, go to a cloud service like Amazon or Google Cloud and try to set up a cluster. Because running things on a laptop and running things on a cluster is like a huge, huge difference. And you will run into all sorts of issues, and you will learn all sorts of things when trying to run these big data technologies as a cluster, right? And it really, really helps you understand the technology, and also it really helps you to sort of stand out in interviews. So next thing I get is, okay, sure, I want to do cluster. How much it's going to cost me, right? Here's a quick example, right? And I just picked this about Amazon. So Amazon, you can rent a 2 CPU machine with 8 gig memory for about 12 cents an hour, right? So let's say you're running a 5-node cluster of Hadoop, Spark, doesn't matter, whichever one. If you run for like an hour, it costs $1, right? Let's say you run them for 5 nodes for like the entire day. It's like say 6 hours, right? And it's like $6, right? I mean, so on the overall scheme of things, it's not very expensive, and I highly, highly recommend you guys actually, once you learn technology, try to run it as a cluster, whether it's Spark, Storm, Hadoop. Because running on a cluster, you learn quite a bit. So let's say you're learning on your own time, right? And especially if you have family and kids, whatnot. Yeah, it needs some self-discipline, right? So because basically you're going to be using your personal time. One of the best motivation tool I found is do like a pair study, right? For example, let's say you are learning big data technologies, you find one of your friend or a colleague learning it too. Just join hands, right? And then do it together. So this way you can set up some time apart, 1 or 2 hours every week to really sort of go in and study. And also when you do this, you can kind of motivate and teach each other, right? So that's a very good way to learn a technology, especially when you're doing this on your own time. Okay. So let's say you're learning technology. One thing we are finding out is, let's say, so it's kind of like this diagram, like you're a new grad, your jobs are here, right? There's a chasm you have to kind of cross, right? Because I'm sure you have seen the job posting, people are writing, I'm looking for Hadoop developers with 4 years of Hadoop, right? And 2 years of Spark. And if you're just learning, right, how do you kind of crack the code, right? Cross the chasm and land your job. So next session, I'm going to give you some tips on not just sort of like technology perspective, but sort of everything else that helps you land a job, right? First thing, Certifications, right? They are not a bad idea, especially when you're switching from, let's say you're a DB admin and you're switching to Hadoop. Having a certificate is always a good idea, right? Because that kind of tells you, hey, you went through this, you know the basics, so that can act as a filter. And when you do certifications, please go to reputed certifications, right? For example, Hadoop, I recommend either Cloudera or Hortonworks. For Spark, there's one for O'Reilly and Databricks. So please stick to those name brands, right? Don't just get some, some infotech certificate, because nobody gives a damn, right? So please, when you do certifications, just stick to the reputed names. Another thing you can do certification is, like, the exams are very reasonable. You don't have to take the course. You can actually go to the exam, right? Exams are a couple of $100. You pay and you can take them online, or you can take them at a local in a local center. Either way is good. But anyway, certification is, it's not a bad idea to have, especially when you're switching from another field to big data. Right? Another question I ask is, do you want to get a pay cut? Possibly, right? So I'll give you an example of one of my friend. He was a Oracle admin, and he was making pretty good money, and he wanted to switch to Hadoop. And he took the course, he took the certification, and he wanted to switch. But since he is new to Hadoop, his pay as a Hadoop admin was about a little lower than what he was making. But he did took the pay cut and took the job. And then within 6 or 8 months, he went to he took another job that paid him almost twice as much, right? Because sometimes you can have to take a pay cut because you are new in Hadoop or new in Spark until you get some experience. And usually I say, you know what, go ahead and take a pay cut, and something you can reevaluate and maybe get a higher paying job, right? So think about that too, right? Networking. So the question was, when you do a certification, do I need to do a practice test? Yes, that's always a good, because all these vendors, they also have practice exams available. So do take those, right? That'll give you an idea of how the test is, what the format is, how it's structured, and it'll give you sort of confidence to go take the test. Yeah, so definitely do the practice test, before you get your certification. All right, let's talk about the networking skills, right? One of the main things I always tell people is you need to get your own business card, right? It happens all the time. I meet people at conferences or whatnot, and they give me their company business card. And after a few months, when I want to get in touch with them, or I have an opportunity to write for them, I try to email them. What happens? The email bounces, right? Because they left the company, or they moved on. So I always recommend, please get your own business card, right? They are very cheap. Just put your own email address, like Gmail or Hotmail or whatever, right? So this way, that email is always current, and we know how to always get in touch with you, right? So networking, you can also go to meetups. Meetups are, I found, like a great way to network, because when you go to a meetup, you meet other people who are in similar interests, right? And there are tons and tons of meetups, right? Conferences, these are my favorite actually, right? Because conferences, when you go to conference, people are there to learn and network, right? So it's a very content, very high quality networking in conferences. Some conferences can be expensive, right? For example, Strata conference, I think, like started 2,000 plus, right? In that case, if you don't want to pony up the money, you can always try to find a friend or a colleague that will give you like a visitor pass, right? And especially companies who have booths in the expo area, they always get 1 or 2 visitor passes, right? So you can sort of see if you know somebody who knows somebody who will get you a visitor pass for a couple of hours. So not a bad deal. Also, there are a lot of conferences we see, and these are very high quality conferences, like HBS conference, for example, Hadoop Summit. These are just few $100. So they don't cost thousands of dollars. So a few $100, and I think honestly, for the experience and the learning you get, they are a very good value. Especially if you register very early. Like for example, when Hadoop Summit announces, they announce like 6 months in advance, and probably they will give you like, you can probably get a conference for like, half or for 60% off, right? Really good deal. So sign up early for savings. Networking, I always ask people, right? No matter how you network, you then do the right people. Meaning you need to network with the decision makers. So how do you find these people? Right? So here are some tips. This is one of my favorite books to read about networking. It's by Keith Ferrazzi. Please read the book. It will give you some practical tips on networking. Right? Another thing I love to do networking is I love making introductions to people. Right? For example, imagine I'm sure you run into people all the time, and sometimes you think, maybe these two people should talk because they have something in common. And I do this all the time, and always it works out really well because when you introduce two people, and they hit it off, and they do something together, then they always remember you, right? They say, oh yes, it was we were introduced by Sujee. One of the examples I will tell you is I introduced two of my colleagues from two different companies, and within a year I learned they were starting their own company together, right? So yeah, so things do happen, right? So do make the intros. It doesn't take a lot of effort. Just just a simple email introducing both people is perfectly fine. Also, volunteering is a great way to meet some people. For example, let's say you're a meetup organizer, you want to help them with the organizing a meetup, and then you'll get in touch with you get to know a lot of people in the industry, right? So these are some of the ways to you can start networking. It does take some of your personal time, but I think the reward is well worth it. So we always heard this term, right? Now we used to hear like it's not what you know, it's like who you know, right? However, I don't think it's true anymore, right? I think it who knows you, meaning people should know you for something, right? And these are the people actually who get these great jobs. So, all right. So one of the ways to be known, right, is to contribute to open source. So this is a really huge addition to the resume. If you have any open source projects, you can write good blogs, and they will show up in search engine. Then they will establish as an expert author, right? And if you want, you can write a book, right? So again, I don't recommend this. Don't take this lightly because it's a lot of effort. We wrote our Hadoop Illuminated, on our own, right, without any publishers, and that actually helped us quite a bit to launch our business. However, oh my God, it was a lot of effort. So only write a book if you have lots and lots of free time, right? So this is a old resume, right? You remember, we all remember in our high school or in our graduation, we were told how to write the resume, right? We'll say, oh, you should have your objective, you should have your education, and chronology and all this nonsense, right? This is not relevant anymore. This is your new resume, right? When I interview people, I ask for two things. I ask them send me your GitHub, and I can pretty quickly make up a decision by looking at the activities in both of them, right? So you had to really pay attention to these sort of a new resume, right? LinkedIn and GitHub. And when you do GitHub, we look at your how active you are in a GitHub. Are you contributing code? Are you fixing bugs? Are you submitting requests? So this one shows me, right, you are pretty active, right? All through the year. This one, on the other hand, shows hey, just signed up for an account and you don't do anything. Right? So if you do give out your GitHub account, please make sure, right, there's some activity, right, because we do check these. So and you wouldn't believe how many times I go to GitHub links. I go to them and their GitHub profile is completely empty, right? They haven't done a single thing. So that's not a good impression. Getting involved in open source, right? Like I said, it gives you a huge leg up on your interview. Like when you walk into an interview and then you are an open source contributor, right? I mean that also already puts you in the top, I don't know, 1 or 2 percentile of all the candidates, right? Because to me, when you do open source, it just means two things. One, you are passionate about technology, that you are also willing to dedicate some of your own time to work on open source, right? So the best option is, if you can work in companies like Cloudera, Netflix, right? You can actually get to work on open source and get paid, right? I think that's the best case scenario. Even if you don't, there are things you can do. For example, you can start contributing to other open source projects, right? Start fixing bugs. Start looking at documentation fixes, right? So you don't need to start your own project. You can sort of go to any, even those big projects, they have bugs marked for beginners. So you can sort of start fixing those. And if you're starting your own, and again, I see this sadly all the time. People start like, oh yeah, they'll go to GitHub and do a project about doing some hashtag counting using Storm or Spark, right? And when you look at this, like, okay, yeah, so what? There are like a million other projects just like that. So I recommend when you do your open source project, please, right, do something, something a little unique and meaningful, right? For example, so my friend Mark Ersner, he has a low background. So he actually did an open source project combining e-discovery and Hadoop, like a very unique combination, because it actually solved a real need with using big data tools. So think about that. Think about what you know, and sort of try to solve the problem using a big data tool, technology like Hadoop or Spark or Storm, any of these, right? So I'll tell you a quick story, and I'll kind of make this very quick. I submitted for a project called HBase, right? HBase is a NoSQL database for Hadoop. So I kind of, I was kind of messing around with something, and I want to change something, and I fixed it for my own need. Then I said, hey, let me just submit it as a patch. And it's very scary, right? Because HBase is a huge project with lots of seasoned developers. However, right, I'll show you some example, right? When you actually go and submit jobs, people are very, very supportive. Like, here, there are even like, people giving me code saying, hey, use this code, right? So because this is my sort of a first Hadoop submission or HBase submission, and I was very nervous, but the experience has been nothing but great, right? People are very, very supportive. Right? So do try, do try, right? You'll get lots and lots of help. Another thing, and this is something a lot of developers overlook, is documentation, right? Because a lot of people have in their mind to submit code to like a big data project, you need to be this distributed systems guru, right? No, not really, because there are the biggest thing lacking in big data projects right now is documentation, right? And if you write and developers are too busy always, right? Or they don't like to write documentation. So if you contribute for documentation, you get huge thumbs up, right? And I had done this in HBase as well. I submitted some docs update, and they were really grateful. So maybe start with this. If your background is not code, if you're just start with docs, right? They're always a great way to get started. All right. Okay, how do you speak in meetups or conferences? If, for example, when you say speak at conferences, people say, oh yeah, I want to speak at Hadoop Summit, right? That is kind of very hard to do because a lot of people want to speak at Hadoop Summit, and it's a huge competition. I would recommend something a little local, right? Start with local meetups and say, hey, you can go to a local meetup and say, how did you learn Storm or Spark or something, right? Also, there are a lot of local conferences which are easy to get into. Like, for example, in Silicon Valley, we have SV CodeCamp, something like Data Week, right? So try these. And I use Lanyard as a website to sort of see what conferences are coming up. So in the Lanyard, you can go and set up some alerts. So for example, let's say you're tracking big data conferences. Any big data conference comes up, it will send you an email, right? So pretty nice way to keep track of conferences. Lanyard, the website. All right, finally, kind of want to do some interview stories, right? Let's say you've done all this and you go to interviews. How do you really do well in interviews? So some of the tips. So first thing we do is phone screening, right? We can get the resume. We want to go over the phone screening with you. Basically, phone screening is to basically weed out people who doesn't make the cut, right? And I'll be honest with you. Like phone screening is basically, we may phone screen like 20 people, and out of the 20 people, maybe 5 people get invited for an in-person interview. So in phone screen, you will be asked like a lot of the basics, like a lot of theory, right? They will say, oh, okay, what's the difference between Cassandra and HBase, right? It tells you the theories and fundamentals pretty well. Another thing we see is phone screening with coding, right? So what I mean by that is phone screen, we actually ask you to write code. For example, I may give you like a little Google Docs. I can share a Google Docs with you and then say, write me a code or write me a little pig script that'll remove duplicates from a data set, something like this, right? Something you can do in like 10, 20 minutes. Now the thing is, this is very, very hard. Because a lot of people flunk these code exercises, especially over the phone, because you're not working on a whiteboard. Kind of a hard experience, right? You're talking to somebody on the phone and writing code. It isn't the most intuitive things. So I recommend practice with a friend, right? You'll be amazed how many people, even experienced programmers, when I ask them to write code remotely, they'll really struggle. So practice with a friend. Use something like Google Docs, right? Google Docs is pretty great. You can type code and they can see it on the other end in real time, and so you can sort of practice, right? So quantitative coding, on-site interview, right? So when you get kind of on-site, basically you already made the cut, right? So now you're basically maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 10. So the way I kind of run these interviews is basically I ask you about ask you to tell you about something you have done. I'll say, okay, tell me about a project you worked on, right? So this kind of gets the thing started, and because everybody's nervous at the interview, so this way you can talk about something you have done and you're familiar with, and then I will kind of sort of follow up on that and say, I will ask you to say draw a diagram of your project, and then I will start asking questions on that and say, hey, okay, how about this? Why did you choose this component instead of that, right? So can you justify your choices, things like that. And finally, I ask you to do some of your own project, right? So because this kind of makes sure, all right, you're actually really capable. So a little bit more insight, right? This is what I call hijacking the interview, right? It sounds bad, but let me tell you guys what it is. So when you go into interview, a lot of people just sit on the other side of the table and wait for me to ask them questions. So I'll ask them, okay, how about this? What do you think about this, right? We'll keep asking. So you're kind of in a passive mode, right? By hijacking, what I mean is you should sort of take initiative and seize the interview so you can talk about something you have done, right? Talk about your own project, and go to the whiteboard, draw up your design of what you have designed, and kind of explain to me, how this works, and walk me through the code. And even better, show me a demo, right, of a project. So this way, you're kind of seizing the interview, and you're kind of showing me what you have done. So I usually allow up to 50% of the interview time for you, right? So if you chose to like speak about a project or to give me a demo or something, I'm happy to give you half the interview time to do this, right? Because the reason I recommend you do this is if you don't, right, you're sitting there for like 1 hour or 2 hours, and you're kind of answering my questions, and most of the time, right, and when now you're on my terms, right? So I could be asking you 10, 20 questions, and you may only get like 4 or 5 right, and that puts you in a bad, in a below average position, right? So, but if you talk about your own project, this is great, right? Because then you're confident because you know what you're talking about, and you can, that's your chance to impress, right? So please hijack the interview, right? And when I mean this in a good way, right? Hijacking. So, and everybody asks you this, right? They will say, oh, tell me about something you've done with, say Hadoop or Spark or whatever you're interviewing for, right? Again, this is your chance, right? You need to be able to be ready and kind of be ready. I love when people go up to the whiteboard and show the design. Also, even more important, I recommend people to bring their laptops, right? And then sort of show me a code and show me a demo running on there, right? So when you do a demo through code, here are some of the couple of hints to keep you honest, right? Show me something really cool and say, hey, here's a little algorithm that I designed to do this, right? Oh, cool. That's like maybe you spend like a weekend working on this algorithm, and it's time to show off. Also, I recommend you guys should show me some reasonable mistakes. What do I mean by that? I shouldn't say mistakes. Maybe I should say reasonable compromises, right? So you should say, oh, hey, here I kind of used, this algorithm is not the most effective algorithm, but I kind of did it because I was in a hurry, and if I had to do it all over again, I will do this differently, right? So these are what I call reasonable shortcuts or reasonable compromises. So that's sort of and we all make this. Trust me on this one. At every scale, everybody makes compromises or takes shortcuts. So kind of it sort of makes you a little bit more human, right? So do show those. Don't show me like really stupid mistakes, right? Because then it puts you in a bad light. But show me something reasonable, which we can all appreciate and understand, right? Kind of a little trip. So huge question, right? What if you are learning big data? You really haven't worked in big data. what are you going to talk about? So this is where your hobby project should come in, right? Meaning, let's say you are working on something on your own, something interesting. This is where you should show, hey, you know what, this is what I'm working on Spark, or this is what I'm working with Hadoop, right? Even though we understand this is not like, you haven't worked anywhere with Hadoop or Spark or, whatever big data technologies, this is where, you should be able to come in and impress us, right? So again, like I said, cool project, right? And if you just show me, another word count in Spark or Storm, yeah, that's not impressive, right? Everyone has done this. So what we look for is something unique, good design, right? You may have a very grand design, but you may only have it completed like 10% of the design. That's fine, right? We all have, other time constraints, but also look at a good vision. I'm going to say, what do you want this project to do in 6 months, 1 year, right? Tell me your ambitions. And again, I want this to be something you spend a few days on, right? Not just something you cobbled up in 2 hours, because that shows, you're serious. So again, this is a quick word. Even if you don't have practical experience, this is where doing a project on your own is really, really helpful. So you can come and show us, right? And trust me, actually, one of the project interview we did is like, we had a person walk in and he just learned Hadoop and he was doing a recommendation system using Hadoop, and he showed us the code and walked us through the design, and even gave us a demo, and actually, and he got hired. And this is a person who just learned Hadoop on his own, right? He didn't go to, he didn't work in Hadoop in any other company. So these things do work. So some of the things don't do in, right, in interviews. So, here are some of the stories. Again, it's a lot of text, but I'm gonna. So one person came in and he drew a really complex big data system on the whiteboard. And I thought, oh yeah, that's impressive. So, which one of these components you actually worked on? He said, no, I just did the design. Like, we had other people doing the work, right? No, right? Especially big data. We don't want PowerPoint architects, right? We want people who can actually write code, design, and be hands-on. So please be hands-on, right? There are so many people who just do PowerPoints, and in big data, it's not a place for them, right? And another mistake I see is people will come and you sort of expect, say, hey, they will ask me, okay, do you have any questions for me for my resume, right? So you shouldn't ask me that. You should start highlighting, hey, you know what, I did the summer camp, I went this, I did that, you know what I mean? So you should be like proactively highlighting your resume. So please don't be passive, like be really, really proactive, right? Another and this is kind of an honest mistake, right? And I really sympathize with, when this happens to people. People will bring their laptop and they will be expecting an internet connection. And sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you don't, right? So I cannot tell you how many times people will come and say, I have a cool demo, it's hosted in the cloud. Oh, wait, I don't know, my internet is not working, right? So pretty, bad scenario, because, you're trying to show us a cool thing, but you can't because, we don't, there's no internet connection, right? So how do you avoid this? You can bring your own hotspot. For example, if you have a smartphone, most smartphones have like a little hotspot feature. You can activate it and you can connect to that, and then you will have Wi-Fi access, right? Bring that. Also, another simplest thing you can do, you can record the demo, right? Do like a screencast, do a recording. This way, you can just play me the video and say, hey, look, okay, here I'm clicking on this one and this is happening, right? Something so simple, and a lot of people kind of don't do this. So please, kind of when you're going to an interview, have a demo recorded, right? So you can always, if the internet works, you can show a live demo. If not, you can always fall back to the demo, right? So kind of come be prepared, right? I always recommend bring your own laptop, right? You should have pretty much all the tools that you would use to work, right? For example, I would download all the documentation locally. If you don't have internet access, you can browse APIs locally, right? Also, it's okay to bring your own code snippets, right? We all have our own, like a library of code snippets that we use, and that's perfectly okay, right? Because this is most of the right code, right? Maybe I have a little code snippet that calculates, I don't know, something of a string, right? And you're happy to reuse it. And this is the most programs write code, so these are all perfectly fine. So bring your laptop fully loaded with everything you need to write code or show me a demo. Also, when you bring a laptop, also bring a USB drive, right? In one instance, this candidate came in and her laptop just died, right? It just wouldn't boot up. So And can you imagine how nervous that person must have been, right? When you come to the interview, your laptop just died on you, right? So yeah, just bring a USB drive with all the important files, so in case you can borrow my laptop and show me what's going on, right? So some of the tips. All right, guys. So that's it. So those are the tips on how to do interviews, right? And how to stand out in interviews. Again, we are going to send out these PowerPoint slides if it is registered. Also, what I want to highlight is if you're looking for some big data trainings, that's what we do, right? We do big data trainings. Our trainings are very hands-on. We do small groups, and also, people who teach big data for us, we actually work in big data, right? We can do them online or on-site. If you're like a company, you're like a few developers, we can come on-site and teach you guys. And here are some of the upcoming trainings, right? For example, we have a 3-day training coming up in Santa Clara this month, June 27th. Check out the website learnersplace.com. Also, you can check out our website, elephantskill.com/training for upcoming trainings, right? So now we are done with the webinar side of things. If you have any questions, go ahead and type into like a little chat window. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have, right? And what we will do is we will send out all the slides in a few days to you guys, and also hopefully a recording, right? All right, guys, questions. So question is, how do we transition if you're sort of a BI background, right? Very good question. So the way I look at this is business intelligence is always important. Let's say in whatever domain you guys work in. What's going to happen is when you come to big data, you're going to be using your BI using big data tools. For example, there are a lot of BI tools like Tableau and Pentaho. They already support big data. So let's say you're a Tableau person. You can connect your Tableau to big data systems and do analytics at a mega, really, really large scale. So yeah, so BI is still like a very growing field, and there's a huge demand for doing business intelligence using big data tools. Right. Another question I had was, are there any books recommended for learning some of the technologies? Again, what I would do is I will put together an email with some of the books we found useful, and we will send it to you guys in a few days. Right. Question. Moving from Microsoft to big data. Great question. I'm glad you asked this one. So as you guys know, right, I mean, a lot of the big data components are sort of kind of a Linux Java based, right? And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So it's a good investment if you're, let's say you're like a .NET, Microsoft, Windows person. It's not a bad idea to invest some time learning something like Linux and Java. Because I can guarantee you most big data systems are going to be based on Linux and Java, at least for the foreseeable future. However, for example, if you go to cloud Azure, like a Microsoft Azure cloud, they are doing a lot of big data implementation on Windows-based systems. So that's maybe worth checking out. For example, Azure, I know they just came up with some machine learning toolkit. That's basically .NET, right? So maybe that might be something you want to check out. But however, I would highly recommend, investing time learning like sort of the Linux, Java, right? So, very good, guys. What else? What if you're a Java developer? What you should learn in Hadoop, right? So, basically, if you're a Java developer, you already have a pretty good background in Hadoop. What I would recommend if you're learning Hadoop is start with high-level tools like Pig and Hive. You can still write, Java MapReduce code, but these days that's kind of, that's too low level. So we always recommend developers to start high level tools like Pig and Hive. And if you need to go low level, you can still do Java MapReduce, right? So, any specific job board for big data opportunities? Great question. Let me look it up. I remember I used to come up with a few when I was sort of browsing around. What I would do is I will look them again and send you guys an email, right? In the email, I will put these as well. One place I found is Stack Overflow, right? I'm sure, when you guys do a search for any coding question, you'll probably run into Stack Overflow website. They have a job board as well, right? So it's worth checking out. All right, so sort of helping with sort of big data. I'm happy to do so. Shoot me an email, right? If I can help you in any way, I'm happy to help, right? Machine learning, yes, very good question. Oops, sorry, let me go back. PowerPoint. All right. Sorry, guys. Yep. All right. So, okay, machine learning. So machine learning is sort of the next frontier, right? Machine learning is, I mean, remember in 90s with, we thought web technology is going to be very prevalent. Right now we are at an age where machine learning is starting to come online, right? And so machine learning is a great skill to have. If you have a chance to learn machine learning, either on your own or through training, it's a great technology to pick up, right? It's a very important technology to learn. However, machine learning, being really good at machine learning takes a very strong math and statistic background. So, I know people who have gone back to school to do like a little stats or math masters and became like data scientists. But, if you don't have time, and there are still, other things you can do to learn machine learning. Right? So, yeah. But again, remember, learning machine learning is one thing, but, being good at this is like completely different, right? There's a huge skill gap in machine learning. So if you're a C++ developer, which one do you learn? Great question. So I would start if you're looking at a new language to learn, if you're a C++ developer, I would look at Python. The reason is it's an easy enough language to pick up, and also a lot of systems like Spark now support Python right out of the box. So if you're a C++ developer, look into learning Python. Right? Volunteering in big data projects, shoot me an email. Let me see if I can connect you with some of the projects that's going on. Right? Because again, like I said, if you're learning big data, the best case is pair up with somebody. So this way, find a buddy or find a coworker who's also learning, and this way you guys can do any projects together. And if you're interested in helping somebody with their big data projects, shoot me an email. My email is right here, right? Sujee@elephantScale.com. And then let me see if anything comes along. I'm happy to connect you. All right, guys. Any other questions? Perfect. Hey, so again, thank you so much for being in the webinar, guys. What I would do is the webinar is recorded, so we will send out the recording for you guys and also send out the slides in a few days. All right, if there are no more questions, I think we are done. Thank you so much, guys.